Hey guys and girls, welcome to episode 8, we believe, if we can count, of Bros with Brains with myself, Aaron, or Elite Strength Coach, as some of you happen to know me by. And on this podcast, as always, is my friend and host and basically fat-cheeked mustache man, Benny Boy. How are you, sir?
Good, mate. Good. Fat cheek is coming to an end soon, hopefully. So
yeah, I was going to say, well, you're up to 100.
Chisel the
Did you get to
100?
100? Did you get to the 110 yet?
I did. I cranked the 110 for one day.
That's it. You're done. Game over. Finished.
That was the plan. Just get 110.
Prep is done.
That's it. That's the off season complete.
I thought that was on season. No joke.
Yeah, I got to 110, and literally like the next day, I think I had like 20,000 steps at work and about 40 different orders to put away, and like sales went through the roof. It was like back down to like 108, and I was like, "Well, inconsistent eating, that'll do it to you."
What, these guys making you work? What is this bullshit? I can make that dollar, earn that dollar.
Well, mate, yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting week for myself and Matter, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I heard. Go on. Are we sharing the news or not really yet?
No, fuck it, let's do it. I mean, it's time to start, right? So
tell the people.
No better point than the present. I guess so. Officially, as of Tuesday, I resigned as a business and store manager for Nutrition Warehouse. So I'll be just back down to part-time, probably 3 days a week. And I'll be taking on the challenge of expanding and building Matter to what I think it can be, which is, in my head, whether that's a delusion of grandeur or not, pretty fucking big. So I've got some intense goals for myself that will require more time than what I've been giving them. And to put it bluntly, I guess my values have just stopped aligning, I guess, with not so much the supplement industry, but just that side of things. Like as a general job, it's great. I could do it. But in terms of like my ethics and values and stuff, it just doesn't align anymore. And it's like when you're constantly internally fighting a battle of, you know, what I have to say versus what I want to say versus what I want to do versus what I want to sell and that sort of thing. It becomes conflicting and draining. Like you're, you know, having to switch on every other day, that you've got to put on the salesman face, and as well as the manager and business face. Like you're a face of the business, you're a part of the brand. So what you do reflects that. It's fucking exhausting for the rest of the things you want to do. And I started finding that, I sort of talked on my Instagram last night a bit, not to derail the conversation this way, but it was becoming demotivating, and I was becoming just constantly frustrated, exhausted. I was losing passion for my training. I was more concerned about like, what time do I finish work? Have I done anything for the next day? Have I done all this stuff? And it was just, every other passion I had was just sort of sinking. My training intensity, whilst great, I know could be 3 or 4 levels higher. So, you know, my business intensity, my study intensity is taken away from those things. So to get to where I want to be, it was kind of like that sink or swim decision where I either do it now or I don't do it at all kind of thing. So made the choice after some pretty intense sort of introspection and decided it was time to move on and move away from a position I was in and start forcing Matter to grow how I want to.
Yeah. So basically, for everyone listening, what he's basically trying to say is he doesn't like being gagged anymore. So that's been removed. He doesn't like being tied down anymore. So we're not tying him down. just to make it easy for everyone to understand.
Just for you guys to follow along at home.
Yeah. I mean, we've got to make it a little bit dirty. Come on. Otherwise, what's the point of this podcast?
The muzzle will come out though. That's fine.
Yeah, it's just he still likes to be paddled. But I mean, it is exciting times. I guess it's always really hard to put that towel in, so to speak, and, you know, understand that means to an end has now come to an end.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, it's sort of what it's there for. And it was like me, and I think my previous job working for a group fitness company, which shall not be named for reasons that if anyone knows, I just really don't want to name them because they're fucking idiots. But basically putting in the notice, actually for myself, though, my notice was quite fun. We all did it in one hit, and I just sort of, to my concern, I quit. Regards. Like that was pretty much it. But I mean, it got to that final straw where we kept getting fucking stooged around by the powers at be at the time. So but it is nerve-wracking, right? Like you take that plunge, you're like, shit, like, you know, your back's against the wall. What are you going to do?
It is, man. It's a mix of like, you know, my, not so much happiness, because I'm not I'm not one of those people who believes you have to be happy all the time. I'm the first person to study, philosophize, and agree with the fact that life is experiencing suffering and understanding you need to have the ability to overcome that adversity and step forward. I'm the first person to say that. But when it becomes more so like you're ruining life as well, like, yeah, it pays a check, but that check comes at the cost of like, my virtues, my values, my ethics, all that sort of thing. And like mental fortitude, just general feelings of, I guess, to a degree, happiness. Is that dollar amount worth that? When I could be putting that same energy and effort into growing a business that I wholeheartedly believe in and think will change a lot of things for a lot of people. So, the acceptance of that being the current situation, I was like, I thought maybe I'd get to the end of the year. And then, having practice or studying acceptance therapy and stuff at the moment, mindfulness, meditation, box breathing, all these other tools that I'm learning, applying them to myself. And I was like, am I actually annoyed at the customers? Am I actually annoyed at the business? Or I'm not in line with what this is anymore. And the longer I'm here, the further I'm derailing matter from being like what its potential is. And so took that step. But 100%. It was like completely nerve-wracking. I've had like massive anxiety all week because I know I've got certain financial goals I need to hit and obligations to hit. So it's like, there's no time to relax and kiss ass kind of thing. If I'm doing this, it's to build something better, and I need to do that like straight away. So it was a nerve-wracking position, but I'm fucking excited.
Yeah, man, it's going to be fucking fun as shit. That is for sure.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So we were talking a little bit during the weekend off camera. Something's got you rolled up. Something's got the big boy, 110, 108 now, and probably going to drop to 95 after the time he realizes that being self-employed, after being self-employed, is a bitch. So welcome to that life stress. So good on you. You've done
$20 is $20 at this point.
Take it from someone who's been doing it for 5 years. Enjoy. I tell you now. But, and I guess all those listeners that are self-employed will definitely understand what I'm saying. Good luck with that stress and anxiety, because that's a whole different ball game. But what's got you riled up is being a bit fired up this week, and I mean it turns me on. I don't know about the rest of you. What's been going on?
He comes in firing, guns blazing. Look,
that's it.
Now this one, I'm interested to hear both sides. So if you are listening, or you are a listener and you've heard all of our conversations before, and you kind of have a different opinion or want to explain it clearer to me,
well, then you're wrong. No,
then you're wrong. Stay away.
I'm kidding. Not going.
I'm all ears. I am very much someone. If you listen to any other podcasts I've been in, I'm all for debate, discussion, dichotomy of different positions. Now, the term culture, and not in the sense of ethics or ethnicity or heritage, not that sort of culture. This weird context we've applied to things and termed it culture, and then applied terms like toxic in and amongst the discussion has got me a bit, a bit confused in the sense of where it comes from. It's like where we might take the convo down the track will probably help understand a little bit, but I've seen a lot of people referring to things like diet and toxic diet culture, fitness or gym culture and toxic fitness and gym culture. There's the times where you hear like the dressing shed culture and the bro culture, and like it's this weird context to me where I can see its prevalence. I can see that there is a possible connection of what you're trying to get at, but at the same time, the way I understand the term culture would imply that, and let's look at, say, we talk about Japanese culture or Chinese culture or German culture or South African culture, whatever it is. We might talk of a certain heritage or background in terms of that culture. They might have shared values, beliefs. They have family ideals and values that they embody and share. For some reason, when we're talking about this in the sense of, say, diet or gym or what have you, or fitness as a collective, the way I see it, there's no underlying shared values, beliefs, connections, attitudes, enforced social norms amongst gym goers or people who diet of any kind, because we all have individual goals. And so we all have the individual needs and wants and reactions and different contexts. So to imply that, say, for instance, because let's say person X didn't adhere to their diet, didn't manage to successfully lose the weight, rather than saying, hey, look, this didn't work for me, I noticed the rebuttal is, diet culture is toxic. We should not be forced to diet. We do not need to engage in a diet. It's wrong. Society is demeaning us and making us believe this, and we have to do this. Rather than just saying, hey, look, this position didn't work for me, or this modality or this execution, perhaps the wrong approach. I may suit something a bit more flexible, or may suit something less intense or drastic. That's fine. We can have that conversation. It's when it's applied in that regard that position A didn't work for me, therefore dismiss the entire position. We never have the conversation of the polar opposite, where someone wants to sit and go, look, it didn't work for me, but it worked for person B. I find person A and it didn't work for me, but I saw that person B got great results. Does that mean there's a collective toxic
Well, I guess
there?
my question to you, just to clarify, obviously for the listeners, you're talking about, let's say this person did try to diet down, it didn't work in their approach. And then is it outside people saying, well, diet culture is blah, 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 or is the person who didn't successfully, get the outcome then turns to something to blame it on, saying diet culture is blah, 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 blah? Which one are you trying to?
It seems to be the A equals B there. So rather than I'm seeing these people I see people negatively associate the term culture to dismiss the fact that they might not align with the thing that they're, I guess, good at, or the thing they want to do.
No, that part I understand. What I'm trying to say is the person themselves that have dieted, say the client that's dieted, and then blaming something else like a diet, like poor dieting culture, because we don't need to diet, blah, 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 because they did achieve the result. Or are you saying, I dieted down, it didn't work for me, and then you turn around and say, hey, that's, why are you dieting? It's bad for you, blah, 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 dieting culture, shit, blah, blah, blah.
Well, the scariest part, or the part that confused me, is I've seen both. That's the kind of part that was getting me not so much riled up, but confused amongst the animosity. Yes. Because either I'm misinterpreting how culture is applied in this context entirely, or people aren't having the discussion of, I guess, positive diet culture then. Because for something to be a toxic diet culture, that means that there's arbitrary positions of a spectrum that you're using. There's a criteria to decide that it's toxic. Well, must mean there's also positive. Because in the same time that I see, people having this conversation about, say, diet culture being toxic, or, the shared fitness culture in a gym is toxic, no one's having the, I want to say, nuanced conversation about the other side of the spectrum, where people are inherently changing their entire life with some basic behavioral change and lifestyle interventions. People are reorientating their entire, I guess, existence based on finding structure and, routine and monotony and habitual behavior through executing diets that work for them, or just general nutrition change, or, finding that they enjoy exercising in some degree somewhere 3 to 4 days a week, or going to the gym and finding that healthy change on their lifestyle, the blood pressure, all that sort of stuff. And so it's not that I'm against even saying culture. I'm trying to understand at what point it's applied and who's defined the criteria, and why we only have the conversation when it's discussed, I guess, in a negative context. When, say, you might see, what's her name? Tess something, that she was on GQ or whatever it was, and she's like a plus size model. I'll put politically correct.
Don't start me on the whole health at any size thing. I'm not going.
Well, we're going to go there. So I've got our right up.
Don't start.
Mate, if I'm going down, you're coming down with me.
We're going to get cancelled together.
But to the degree, they're the first ones to call out things like, diet culture is toxic and diet culture is fat phobic and all this stuff. But, there's also you have to then accept, if that's a position you want to have, that there's also the positives that come out of that same culture, if we're going to use that word, that people are changing their lives and getting healthier and getting happier and finding all these things positively out of that. But it doesn't seem to come up as much. It's it's easier to establish the position of that this is negative and this culture exists in a bad way, and we should destroy it, bring down the system of underlying diet culture, whatever that even means, and just never diet ever again. No one should ever do any sort of nutritional intervention and just be happy with the food they eat, because food is more than just nutrients or whatever. But it's only from the negative side. We don't go to the same people who have successfully changed their lives and gone, hey, what's your thoughts on diet culture? And this person goes, I am so glad that someone exposed me to understanding what nutrition is, what adhering to sustainable lifestyle change is, and how to implement these different behaviors and routines. How I shouldn't have been looking at it from a 12-week challenge perspective, and more of a holistic lifestyle approach. And now I've completely changed my life and I've overhauled everything. we don't get that conversation. I rarely hear that conversation in the same context of culture as you do on the negative of the negative toxic diet side.
You never publicize the good. You always publicize the bad. Don't be stupid, Ben. Stop being logical.
Exactly. That's the part that gets me, is that we allow it to happen, and we put them on the the mainstream, like, popular magazines and photo covers and all sorts of stuff that be whatever you want. I don't care. It doesn't faze me. It's this underlying idea that because we diet, we all have this inherent idea that you're bad for not dieting. I don't give a shit what you do. If you don't want to diet, that's great. That's entirely up to you. I don't like whatever your diet may mean. And if diet is just in the simple context of however you choose to eat across the day, if that's like we define diet, I don't care what you do. But at the same time, if it didn't work for you, or like say you tried a few approaches, you can't then attack the people who did sustainably adhere to it, and they found something that worked for them and completely uprooted their life. You can't then go, well, you shouldn't have done that. You're now fat shaming or phobic or whatever these people because you chose to do it. And that's the part that I see that gets confusing and frustrating me. So like we're endorsing the negative aspect, and then sort of like undermining, taking away from the people who've made positive change. And like that same culture you're talking about is nothing but negative, also had positive consequences and outcomes. So it's not mutually exclusive. You can't sort of bring up the one and never acknowledge the other.
About the other. Yeah, of course, there's got to be balance between both. So, I mean, it's like, I get it. So I guess if we're going to apply this to just simple dieting, or using the example of dieting culture, or, the negatives and the positives, I guess defining culture in this instance is probably the best way to go about it, right? And it's like the Oxford Dictionary says culture. I just happen to have it up on my screen because I'm doing the whole Jamie from Joe Rogan.
Hey, Jamie, can we get that? Yeah.
The arts and other manifestations of human intellectual achievement regarded collectively.
Okay.
Right. Mm-hmm. And then we also have the second meaning, of course, the ideas, customs, and social behavior of a particular people or society.
Okay.
And then for all my nerds out there, just, the verb for biology, maintain in conditions suitable for growth. Just, I thought I'd throw that in there. Where are my nerds at? Just, tissue cells, bacteria, we get it. We got it. Don't worry about you. So if you look at it from, a definition perspective, the second one probably stands out to me more so than the first one, because the arts and other manifestations of human intellectual achievement regarded collectively, which is cool. And the example is 20th century popular culture. Like, cool. I get it. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But then the ideas, customs, and social behavior of a particular people or society, more so society, not so much people, because people's when we start to refer to ethnicity and that sort of stuff,
race and stuff,
which I can, which is fine. Like, we know that sort of stuff. But a society. So are we saying that those who do not agree with, let's say, again, using dieting as the example, because that's what we've been doing, there are always going to be two sides to a coin, right? There's going to be those that are sort of for like dieting and that sort of stuff. And I guess we look at, weight class sports, bodybuilding, blah, 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 blah. And then we look at those who are probably against it. Now, whether they're sort of general population, whether they're people that just simply can't do it, whether they're people that are scared to do it, or whether they're people that just genuinely believe, hey, I like to eat intuitively with, those quotation marks. People that have never really done anything, but then obviously do not also have goals that require dieting, I guess is probably a better way to put it.
Yeah.
It's interesting in that there's always going to be those two sides. It's always going to be, people are always going to try and make it black and white.
Yeah.
I guess it's probably easier for a lot of people as a general population to understand. It's like, it's either yes, no, right, black, white,
it's
yin,
basic
yang,
tribalism, in-group versus out-group.
Yeah, right. So like we do have these people that will claim, I guess, I don't like to use the word toxic, but I mean claim like a negative, like that's a negative culture. It's a toxic culture. It's a bad thing to do without fully understanding. But then on the flip side, we do have those that are in it saying that the opposite is also bad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So is that rather, because then to establish that culture, then we're getting to nuances where we're really finding minority populations to then establish that a culture within this group and a culture within that group. Because then if we're going to look at those subsets of data or subsets of groups and populations, we can break that down even further, because you can't just go all people who diet fit the same thing, because within dieting, within the idea that like we can control and manipulate health, nutrition, body composition, performance, outcomes through nutritional choices and nutritional strategies. There's different spectrums and different groups even amongst that. So to establish that there's a single body of culture amongst just because people are for or against dieting is kind of a wrong approach anyway. Yeah. Like it doesn't fit the context, because we're not one, like even saying where I feel is wrong, because I like to the degree that we're, I guess I want to say, educated on the topic sets us differently to people who are just simply going, the bro approach is the way to be. Like I just stick to my 6 meals of chicken and broccoli. Like that's even different to that. And then
we have family trees. We have family trees on each side, right? Like the pros and the
100%.
So it's like each side. I'm using my hands for those. Channel.
This is mostly an audio podcast.
It's an audio podcast, but I'm using my hands because I'm a wog. That's what we do. Shut up. So it's like talking about ethnicity. I'm Italian, so
Peter.
Anyway,
Peter, just because you got a mustache doesn't mean you speak Italian.
Yeah, pretty much. I've got a full beard, not just a mustache. So, and I spoke Italian before I spoke English. So whatever. So like we have two family trees, and it's like, you got your subsection that comes underneath, and then they all branch off, and then they go again to the next level. So you're going to have like 3 and 4 generations on each side. And it's like, people still don't understand that there's still positives and negatives in each side. So it's like the actual family tree starts with like a yes, no type scenario.
Yeah.
Then you trail down the yes. There's still yes and no coming off.
Yes, exactly.
The yes section, and still yes and no coming off the no section.
Yeah.
It's like, well, this is where it's like when we look at, again, we're taking dieting, for example, it's like, okay, we're let's say pro diet culture, for example. I don't know if that's what you want to term it. And then it's like, okay.
Call it.
Yeah. So it's like, let's just, for argument's sake, call it pro diet culture, pro dieting culture. So it's like, we like to diet. Sure. Then you got those that are like, cool. Now what diet? Or then you have like bro diet, and let's just say like chicken and rice, and for example, for bodybuilding, and let's say, if it fits your macros. So it's like diet plans and if it fits your macros. Cool. That's the next like generation. Then we go another generation down, and it's like, we've got like the educated and uneducated. It's like, well, we have those that are like, yes, if it fits your macros, we can fit whatever you want to eat in as long as it fits your macros. Then you go, well, no, you should probably eat 80% healthy foods and 20% shit foods, as long as it still fits the numbers that you've made. It's like, yes, no, drop it down another generation.
Yeah. Yep.
You know what I mean? It's like a lot of people just don't understand that when they start throwing this culture word around, the depth that you probably don't understand, or you probably haven't thought to.
I think that's the part that gets me most, is because it's coming from a position more of ignorance, especially when it's used in the way of dismissing the positives that come from it, and simply not acknowledging them, as opposed to, I guess, like I can just say a throwaway blanket term like toxic culture, and then that dismisses me of any responsibility over my personal health, my obligation to dieting or adhering to a program. I had a great coach who gave me something, but I just simply couldn't stick to it, or I didn't believe it, and therefore, rather than taking that responsibility, I can just say toxic culture. And then I am like magically void of any, I guess, ownership or responsibility over that outcome. Now, I'm not saying there aren't nuances to the other side, because definitely there are. There are some people who had horrible experiences and they got nothing but a bro coach who said, you're a piece of shit because you couldn't adhere to 20 hours of training a day, 17 meals of chicken and broccoli over the week, and whatever other crap there was they come up with. Fair enough. That's completely fair. But you're looking at individual aspects of then determining that that's a collective, and establishing that in that collective there are a specific or established, I guess, social norms, values, ideologies, beliefs, behaviors. I want to say even like reinforce social norms. Like it doesn't work that way in this instance, because it's not how it works. Because
I agree with you.
You've kind of got to the point of having a population, and we know for a fact if you took like a population sample amongst people, and you was like, this is the population base I'm using. But if that isn't the population trying to study, then it's wrong to just simply take from that pool and go, well, this reflects everyone. Yeah. Because we would just dismiss that study. Like, all right, cool. So that doesn't fit the context at all. And we need to look at more like specificity. We need to look at a specific of that cultural population. And then you would go to a gym and find 100 people, take 100 people out of, say, Good Life, 100 people out of Anytime, 100 people out of Valhalla, 100 people out of Strength Century. There's not going to be a single shared belief, value, or ethical understanding or cultural appreciation amongst those different gyms, let alone those different populations. Yeah. So it's unless the entire premise is that dieting culture is simply the idea that health is manipulated through calorie intake and dieting protocol, maybe, like we could call it that, then I guess you could say most people in this instance would have a somewhat underlying cultural acceptance of dieting, maybe. But then that's not the case. So it doesn't hold up. And this is where I get lost, where I get confused when it's like I'm fine for you to say, look, dieting didn't work for me, and the culture that I existed in, the certain gym I was in, or the coaching practice I was a part of, it didn't work for me. I did not align with the values of it. That's fine. I'm happy to cop that. But when it becomes social, systemic expectation of diet is that we have to be skinny and we have to be.
Yeah, well, I guess in that just that example there that you just used, right? Is that simply the wrong term to use in that the culture that you're in? Is it the culture you're in, or is it the environment that you're in?
Yeah,
because
exactly.
Like, it's interesting. Like, I guess in that aspect, they do share a very fine line in that the environment that you put yourself in, whether they be around people, in a certain place, like your place of rest, for example, if you're at home and you're having problems at home and that sort of stuff, obviously influence your day-to-day activities, whether that be dieting, training, work, whatever. Is that culture, or is that your or is that simply just environment and you're just using the wrong word and taking the wrong context?
That's that. Yeah. That loops us back to me being confused and kind of frustrated, because I'm all for saying there are shit training environments or shit coaching environments and practices that I'm not about at all. But when it becomes misconstrued in culture, and then because once you establish a negative connotation of a culture, you then it's like, the same way if I were to start making like very inappropriate racial jokes towards like Mexican culture or Japanese culture, it becomes like I'm painting the brush of all people from in that culture with the same brush.
Yeah.
And we know that that's looked at as wrong. We know that we shouldn't do that, because that's not the case. Like I ran into a bad Mexican or something, and he was a gang member. So should it be acceptable for me to say, well, all Mexicans are gangsters? Probably not. I'm probably not going to make that joke or that assumption, because that's not a good idea. But in this instance, it seems to be socially acceptable to brush us as the toxic diet culture, because we're all for enforcing this, not even enforcing, but we're for supporting the idea that people should take ownership over their health, take responsibility for their actions, be aware of the foods they're consuming in whatever context, whether that be to manipulate body composition, or whether it be to adhere to performance and improve outcomes, or whether it just simply be to be a little bit healthier. We're of that. Now, if you simply come along and paint all of us and say that we're all bros and we enforce this idea that society is only good if you're all diet and everyone that's overweight is disgusting and wrong,
then you're right. Not joking.
Cancelled. I've never got to a point in knowing a collective of people that believe that. Like I
mean, it's also when people that seem to not, I guess some people, people that tend to use that label for the opposite are those that have never tried it, understand it, done it, and sort of, tried to learn it and understand it and where people come from. So it's like that old, I don't know what that is. I'm scared. So I'm going to make myself feel better by, labeling everybody that does that so I can feel better about myself. And it's kind of like, well, like, yes, but no. Like, I'm glad you feel better about yourself, but you've just sort of, typecast everyone to be the same.
Exactly,
James Smith and
yeah,
bodybuilding. Like, yeah. Like,
you want to start that again?
Well, I'm just saying it's the same example, right?
Yeah,
you typecasted an entire population of people.
Yeah. But I mean, like, because then in that same context, then you are actively dismissing or undermining or disrespecting or discrediting people who have made entire, intense, massive, gargantuan life changes, or completely reorientated their health, their perspective on life, their risk of diseases, or avoided diseases and surgeries because they managed to be a part of a collective of people who simply just said, you know what, I'm going to just improve my health a little bit. And by doing that, I'm going to adhere to a diet that I seeked out from someone who's more professional than me. We've implemented the best possible way of doing it. I've completely changed my life for a positive, and here's the outcome. Now, that's not to say that because that person did it, therefore everyone ever has to do the same way he did, or has to do it, or has to be a part of that. But in the same way that you demand that everyone has to accept you for the body you have and accept that, you don't believe that anyone should diet, you can't then void the same response, I guess, the dichotomy that you have to accept people's decisions to change and want to be in that environment and want to be, I guess, healthier through diet change and implementation of lifestyle habits and I guess, exercise and activity. Like, you can't dismiss that and then also say on the same token, hey, you have to accept me for how I am and accept that this is normal. And like, it just doesn't work that way. But for some reason, we allow that. And I see it all the time. And I'm not going to name names or pick on out or anything, but like, I see that all the time, whether it be celebrities, whether it be like Instagrammers, whether it be just people in general. But then if I were to go onto their page and say, hey, look, like, you're entitled to this opinion, you're entitled to believe this, you're happy, like, I'm all for you doing that, but you're ignoring the fact that this person improved their health and all their markers dropped because of this, and they improved their results and, you know, reduce the risk of type 2 diabetes.
Because also a lot of people talk from a place of emotion.
Exactly.
And again, we all know, and if you don't know, you should know, emotions are never logical. Like, they're very, very different systems. Like,
it's one of the things that are probably mutually exclusive.
Yeah, right. It's like, once we start to make decisions, really on anything that challenges our personal bias, yes. You're probably going to go emotional first, and it's very tricky to pull yourself out and try and be a much more logical approach and trying to take that outside in approach versus inside out. You know, when you're on the outside of something, and the way I sort of try to do it is, if this problem that I'm personally having, right, what I try to do is, it's like, okay, a client or a friend is coming to me with that same problem, what advice would I give them? Because that's going to be a lot more logical than it is going to be emotional. Yep. Whereas if I'm trying to make that decision for myself on the fly, there's a good chance like I'm going to be emotional. I mean, not me, I have the emotional range of a teaspoon, but I'm quite the opposite when it comes to emotional. I'm quite logical, or I try to be, because I mean, as a coach, that's what we have to do, right? We have to try and be as logical as possible and try and remove as much emotion and personal bias as possible when trying to achieve an outcome. So I guess it's sort of a similar approach in that remove your emotions when it comes to making these sorts of decisions and trying to understand things. And you can apply that to a ton of things. And at the moment, it's like I'm having, again, not that I ever want to always bring this up, but having the conversation about, like, you know, COVID and vaccines and all that sort of stuff, and trying to take a more logical, intellectual approach versus an emotional approach. Because emotional, sure, I could be like, you know, the small kid in me is just like, fuck this, fuck that, what the hell, blah, 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 blah. And then you try and sort of step back and think, hey, where are they coming from? Like, they being, you know, higher up. Why are they doing what they're doing? What would I do differently? Like, I guess once we start to try and, you know, look at it from that perspective, it may help, it may not. I don't know. But you can just apply that to so many different things and situations. Yeah.
And I guess, is that why it's socially okay to, I guess, paint us with that brush? I mean, in the same context, I see the term like fitness culture, whatever the fuck that even means, or gym culture.
Yeah, no idea.
Again, when you step into a facility, you could take a population sample size of 100 people, and there's 100 different reasons why people are in that gym. For good reasons, for bad reasons. I'm sure there might be an underlying internalized belief that they have to be leaner for someone else's expectations, but you also have to reflect on the fact that that's part of you. Like, you believe that. So, you know, you might get to, it may come in that conversation, well, it's the social norm that we assume that attractiveness comes through thinness or whatever. I mean,
that's your interpretation of it.
That's your interpretation of it. And I mean, there are many biological reasons. We can go back and forward on psychological evolution about the reasons for these sort of things.
Let's not. We'll be here for 5 hours.
This just became a biology.
This is going to be a 5-part series on psychology and biology of why you need to be skin lean.
But to that degree, though, there's like, it's not that there's any one collective belief there, that because even in saying like the underlying gym culture is everyone has to be fitter or leaner or healthier, I just spent 6 months gaining 25 kilos, and I'm completely different to the person next to me at the gym's goal who just wants to get a better deadlift, and the person beside him who wants to drop 20 pounds, and the person besides them, and she wants to get a stronger booty and do some kickbacks and some stair kickbacks on the Stairmaster, whatever. Like, take away the old guy that's 55 years old, jumping on a treadmill and doing a couple of steps, because you know what? He needs to improve his heart health because he's just had a triple heart fucking bypass. Exactly.
Like, it's perspective.
It's perspective. It's situational. It's contextual. It's nuance. It's so many different things. And you can't brush that and go, well, there's gym culture because, you know, they're fat shaming and doing this. I guarantee you, no one fucking cares. Like, there's no one amongst that gym population where I'm going, these idiots not training that are at home doing their thing, they're idiots because they're not here training. I don't know what you do with your time. I don't care. But at the same time, if I don't care what you're doing, stop labeling the things I do, because I'm not going to make like any assumptions on in a 6-figure business for all I care, all I know, or a 7-figure business. You don't have time to train, and that's your choice. That's great. You're excelling at something outside of my scope or my knowledge that is in line with your field. That's great. You're executing it. But then at the same time, you can't then go, well, you know, I spent all my time doing this and this person's done, spend all their time focusing on that. And I guess it comes back to that funnel of mastery, I guess we've spoken about, or I've spoken about, that, you know, let's say that is the case and you've managed to master something else, but you don't have the time to master the thing I'm mastering. You can't then attack it and say, well, that's toxic because I feel this inherent pressure to have to go and abide by him. I don't care. And I guarantee you 99% of the people in there are more concerned about what they're doing and if they're doing it right than whether or not what you think I think you should be doing.
Yeah, well, at the same time, we also know that those that are most, I guess, what society deems successful in terms of a person, let's say having, you know, a happy life, you know, decent income and all that sort of stuff, they have an encompassing lifestyle where they actually, in fact, do look after their health. They also do look after their finances and that sort of stuff. They look after their home, life, environment, culture, whatever you want to call it. Like they have this balance, and it's like they're not so one-sided or, you know, narrow visioned in that they need to just focus on what it is that they're doing for themselves and, you know, whatever it is that they're doing to make them or help them achieve their goal. Once they've sort of done that and have that on lock, they start to expand. They expand their knowledge, they expand their minds into different things. It's kind of like, okay, well, I've got my finances sorted. I'm good. I'm going to now go improve my health because I haven't been doing that for the last 10 years because I've been too focused. Okay, so we're good here. I'm going to start dabbling into here. Oh, I really liked art. I'm going to start also looking at some artwork, or I'm going to go to, you know, museums when you can and all that sort of shit. Like that's your brain also being healthy. Like it's not just this like dieting culture or culture itself, you know, negative and positive cultures. It's like we have these different things to look at and help us expand past our own narrow visioned selves. I guess that's probably the best way to put it.
Yeah. And because the other thing too, like in the first definition of culture, like I don't go, you know, what's the word? I don't go to a music event, or I don't go to a gig, or I don't go to a museum expo or something like that, and all of a sudden establish that this entire premise is negative because you know, someone here is artsy and I feel this inherent need to please, you know, confine to what they're establishing as their norms. I recognize that I don't care about art that much, and they do, and they're really good at it, or their perspective of art is way better than mine, or more educated, or more important, or whatever. So for me to come here and just appreciate I'm looking at something, or listen to something, or see something, I'm not feeling this inherent need to abide by their expectations, because they also probably don't care that I don't know. They will if I try to talk down to them and say, hey, look, this is where you're wrong because Picasso did this. And they'll say, what the hell are you talking about? You know, one person. And I'll say, yeah, that's fair. I'm going to shut up now. But like, that's this weird concept I don't grasp. It's like, it's only coming from a negative perspective where we talk about these cultures, but it's a culture in which like great positive things have come out of. But I don't feel it anywhere else. Like I can understand you saying, you know, I felt fat shame because I stepped into a gym and I didn't feel comfortable in myself, and I felt like I had to cover myself up because I felt like people were watching me and there was people making comments or whatever. I thought people were making comments, and so I no longer want to go to gym because I had a bad experience. Again, a lot of that's very introspective, very personal perspective, mixed with, I guess, some social expectations maybe. And then you walk away and go, you know what, I want no part of that anymore. That's like, I don't feel that anywhere else. Like I don't feel that if I go to a CrossFit event. I don't feel that if I go to a car show. I don't feel that if I go to a music gig. In the cultures, in all the environments in which these other things happen that I may be slightly interested in or curious on, I don't feel looked down upon when I guess engage with them, because I'm not at the level of the people that are doing it. And maybe it didn't work for me, or it wasn't a thing I was passionate about, so I just walked away. I didn't then go, well, fuck art culture, it's a piece of shit and I hate every part of it and we should stop art. Like that's the part that gets me, where I'm like, that doesn't fit. It doesn't make sense.
Well, I guess the other thing to this is we're going to be here for ages now talking about this, because as much as I hate using anecdote, I think about myself and, you know, being in that situation where I've sort of not typecasted, but I guess not so much even cultured, but like looked at a certain thing, or being in a situation where I'm like, oh, like I don't agree with that, or it doesn't agree with me type scenario, and then sort of dismissed it. Is it a maturity thing? you know, when I say maturity, I don't necessarily mean age maturity. I mean, like, you know, personality, more so than anything, and sort of being exposed to different things. I guess, you know, the more you're exposed to something, you know, the better it is that you get at handling it and then thinking about it. So it's like, for me, for example, like, again, as much as I do not like using myself as an example or anecdote at all, there's certain things that I do not like to do. I'm trying to think of something I don't like. So, like socializing,
being out of the house.
Probably one of the biggest things. It's like I'm also going to, I guess, events like that aren't close friends or family. Like if it's, you know, an acquaintance, you know, that's just like inviting you to like a 30th birthday, 40th birthday, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I don't like doing that. I have social anxiety, severe social anxiety. So, that in itself, like me even thinking about it now, I'm like, I'm already getting anxious thinking about it, right? Yeah. It's not something I want to do. At the same time, is that if I was younger, it would be an automatic no. Just like, I'm not going, too bad.
Yeah.
Like, don't care. Now it's kind of like, okay, like I know I'm going to, you know, have these problems or potentially run into these problems. I want to go, I want to be able to go say hello, do the right thing. I've been invited to something, you know, I can go, obviously, if I don't have any other prior events or anything like that. Go, you know, suck it up, deal with it. Hey, I might just have a fucking good time. That there is every other chance that it's like, it's not going to be as bad as you think. So, you know, in context of what we're talking about, maybe looking at it from the person's perspective, or from, you know, the perspective of the people that are enjoying it. Like we use the art example, like those that are very experienced in art, and, you know, they get so excited by it, and you just sit there like, how the fuck are you getting excited by, you know, three colors on a page? Like, I don't get it. And it's like, you try, instead of looking at him thinking you're a freaking idiot, instead of saying how, like, why, like, teach me, explain to me what you see, because what you're both seeing are two different things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that completely makes sense. But like, it's how I look at, say, like nightclub culture. Like, I'm sick of using like culture, like nightlife. Like when I look at that now, it's like, you know, I used to go because, you know, friends would be going. That was the only way to interact with people. And I felt like, you know, I kind of had to be a part of it, or like, you know, I had to be, that was my thing. Like if I was going and mates were going, if I didn't go, I'd be, you know, I guess a shit person, or I don't know. That was a reflection of me then thinking I had to adhere to their standards and their expectations. When I actually stepped back and was like, it's actually not something I want to do. Here's XYZ reasons. I am comfortable with myself to say no. Boundaries became set and people accepted me for like the things I want to do, but also I didn't attack them for choosing to do it. I didn't dismiss that they did it. You know, I mock Isabel a little bit, you know, living together because she's Miss Socialite, not because she goes and does something, but because she's Miss Socialite. Like, it's the polar opposite to me, and I give a shit about it. Like, she's like, she can be out 7 days of the week, and it's fun to us. Like, when me and Dalton are here, like studying or working, she can be away for 7 nights of the week, and we'd be like, we give her a bit of crap. But also, that's her. Like, when you look at, I guess, like a introvert versus an extrovert, there is literally what we call like a cognitive energy that you might rejuvenate in the way in which you interact. So introverts tend to need more alone time to replenish that level of like emotional capacity, and extroverts need to be out and socialize with people to relieve anxiety and like that pent up frustration, I guess, of being inside and away from people. So it's not that I judge them for doing it. I just choose now not to be I just choose not to do that thing. It doesn't align with me. It's not something I want to do. So I'm free to make that decision, but also means that I'm not in the position to mock people who choose to do it, because that's their life. That's the thing they choose to do. And I guess that's where it kind of like colludes for me and comes back to is like, is it a toxic culture? Because you look at it like, what happens? People go out, they get drunk, they make a fool of themselves, dance, end up eating some probably some shitty kebab somewhere, or a piece of pizza that's been left out for 3 days, and maybe spend too much money, and then they go home. None of that to me makes sense. That like, it sounds like something I would rather do than build my business or train or recover or eat my food, whatever. So it doesn't make sense for me to do it, but I'm not going to go, well, I don't have the perspective or the reason why they're doing it. So to me, that's shit. Everyone should stop doing it, or we should dismiss it and it shouldn't be done, because that's illogical. It doesn't make sense. It's a weird emotional position to have that kind of, I guess, nicely wraps up that little rant, because it just doesn't make sense that my perspective on what is or isn't a good thing or is a negative thing should impact or influence other people's good or bad.
Well, I guess using that example again, this is where it gets even more, but we're talking about sort of that family tree approach. So let's for example say that you did think that was bad. Like, what the fuck are you doing, you idiot? You're going out, still getting drunk, eating shit food, blah, blah, blah. Then you also have those people that do go out, they don't eat, they drink nothing but water because that's all they want to do. Because, hey, they may not trust what it is that they're having. They may, you go to a music festival, who the fuck knows what's going on? Yeah. So, you take your own bottle of water, you buy a bottle of water because you don't want to fucking do the wrong thing. And you're still having a great time and enjoying yourself. Now, do you still have that same opinion? So it's like,
exactly.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So it's like you got two different subclasses or two different generations. You got another generation under those. So it's like we hate people that go out, drink and eat and have a good time, fucking off their heads. And then we've also got, well, how about the people that don't do that, but they still go for a good time? Because you don't have to do that to have fun. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's like, there's just so much nuance to it. And there's so many little contextual things that you need to look at when we talk about this stuff. And like, I agree, when we start throwing around the terms like toxic culture and all this sort of stuff so loosely, like, it's really something that needs to be thought about, because it's so much deeper than that superficial layer that you're looking at. Like, sure, you're seeing one thing or, one layer of an entire situation. You're not thinking deeper about it. Mm-hmm. So it's like, is it toxic, or is it just simply you don't agree? And if you don't agree, well, that's probably more of a reflection of yourself than it is of anything that anyone else is doing, right? So it's like, what's making you think that way?
Yes, exactly. That's a perfect chance to acknowledge your own internalized biases and your, I guess, tribalism and your inverse outgroup opinions, and sort of move forward with them and say, hey, like, as a mature adult, I can look at this and go, well, there's a reason why I don't agree with this, or there's a reason why I fit into this group and not that group, or I'm choosing to align here. And it can actually help you grow up, and it can help you become better at introspection and understanding yourself, because then you become more aware of internalized things. And it's a very simple pathway to go, you know what? It turns out I didn't actually have a problem dieting. I had a problem with this internalized belief that I had to abide by something that I thought was the case, and it wasn't. I can now feel better myself because I've actually understood that was not actually anyone else but me. And it's not to say that every single person is that. It's not to say that every single person who has
it's just an example.
It's an example, and it's I would say a more common example that people want to admit. But it's very easy to throw it away and go, nah, toxic culture, toxic behavior.
It's almost like we spoke about something very similar last week on a podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
it's funny. How many people message me and they're like, "Oh, what about this?" and ask me questions. I'm like, funnily enough, I have a post on that. Funnily enough, I've actually done a podcast on that. You should listen to it. Swipe up.
If you wanted 2 hours of my time and actually to understand it, here's where I talked about it.
Yeah, it's like, guys, we will add timestamps at one point or another, but right now we're just free balling. Like, literally, I'm not wearing any pants, so
I'm going commando at least.
Yeah, it's business up top and party downstairs. As
don't chafe.
On this leather chair. I like the feel of leather.
I guess to continue on from that as well, like we were discussing was before we get into some questions, it's funny though when you do find we become so caught up in the environments we exist in, when you step out of that and go to somewhere different, just how different we are. And that's not with the context that I go out there judging everyone. It's more so just like, in my internalized beliefs and my body dysmorphia and my assumption of my physique, small, not as conditioned as I need to be, lacking body parts. This is wrong. This is missing. This is that. That's
just to make you feel better. You're completely right about your body.
Yeah, that's fair. And that's a genuine checklist that goes on up top. Like on most days, it's like the longer you go down the path of bodybuilding, you internally become less and less content with how you look. Which is why you have to enjoy the process more than the outcome, because most of the time the outcome is going to make you feel like shit.
Yeah, 100%.
But in saying that, it's like you do those things and then you start to you might go to the shopping center, or you might go to an event somewhere, or you might go to the footy or something, and 99.9% of that population doesn't do the thing we do. They don't care. And you're like, oh, maybe I'm weird. Maybe I'm different. Like maybe I am actually a little bit bigger than I thought, or maybe I'm above the standard deviation, I guess, of like general size for a 5'10" human male at 29 years old. It's like, oh, okay, that's possible.
You know what? There's a perfect friggin' example of this. So on Monday, today being Wednesday for when this does drop. On Monday, I went for my MRI on my pancreas finally. And so to get an MRI, they got to put like a cannula in your arm so that they can put the dye through and all that sort of stuff. And they give you a dressing gown, one of the hospital gowns. So she gave me one, and then she's like, "Oh, nope, you're a little bit too big for one. So we're going to basically double it. So one on the front, one on the back." I'm just like, you've just made my day. Like, I haven't eaten all day. I feel really small. You've given me an extra small,
Can you say that again for the
extra small gown for the girls, but it's okay. I'll wear 2. That's fine. Just, yeah, like I feel good. But 100%, like, yeah, we're like literally the 0.001% of the population that actually really gives a shit. Yeah, and it's like that age old thing. Like, I'm going to go train so girls notice me, and girls never notice you. It's the guys that are like, yeah, man, looking big. You're like,
God damn it,
MVP. You're the real MVP, bro. You just made my day.
Stay humble, young king.
Yeah, 100%. That's what it's like, right?
Yeah, for sure. And it's like, it was funny. Last night I come home from the gym, I come home from training and stuff, like just had a shitty session. Like, I didn't feel good because I had like everything's going on, just anxiety's been through the roof and stuff. And I was like, it's just one of those sessions I just pumped it out. And I come home and I was just wearing one of my torn old Strength Century shirts. And Isabel's mum, she's very much like Isabel, but she come on and she was at our place. I do something, I can't remember what it was. And I was in the kitchen, and she goes, "I want to say something, but I don't want to be inappropriate." And I'm like, "What?" She's like, "It's like, I think it's funny, but I want to say it, but I don't want to be inappropriate." I'm like, what are you talking about? And she's like, "If you dyed your shirt green, you'd look like the Hulk." And I was like, why would that be inappropriate? Like,
you have no idea how good that makes me feel.
Like, I've got a mental erection right now. What are you talking about? And
like, it's like when you send your posing photos. Yeah. It's like you send posing photos. Go.
In my head, it's like, in my head, it's like, why would that be inappropriate? What are you talking about? And it's like, general population, she's more concerned like making a comment about someone's appearance, which is like morally probably a good thing. But in my head, I'm like, bitch, just say it. That's fucking great. Tell me that again.
Yeah, it's like you send a photo of like you posing. And it's like, you're working on something, and it's just like, hey, you look balanced. You're like, you've just made my day. Like, yes,
thank you.
That's what I've been working on.
Can I screenshot this and put it as a story?
Yeah, 100%. Just like every time, repost, reshare. Come on.
Yeah, it's funny.
But, I mean, that was a very serious like hour conversation there.
It was, but I mean, it's. I feel like it's necessary purely because of the fact that, there are people that, what if they're on the fence of going to the gym to like revamp their life or take control back of their health, or, reduce heart problems, or, just generally reduce the risk of type 2, or get better muscularity for a sport. And all they're hearing is nothing but negative gym culture and negative diet culture and nutrition culture. And anyone who diets is actually fat shaming people. And then all of a sudden, like, well, morally, it must be wrong if I go do these things then. And it's like, you're affecting, if you're not hearing both sides of that conversation, it's affecting the potential people who do hear it and go, it sways their opinion, and then they limit themselves or risk their own health or risk their own outcomes. And, again, that's not dismissing that people, there's people with eating disorders or eating problems that have developed, or they've got to address other things, underlying psychological issues. I'm studying that stuff. I completely get it. But it's when, that opinion is the only one that's heard, and we don't create the conversation, rather than it's more of a dictatorship in the linguistics of it, the conversation. It becomes more of a dictatorship from one side than having a dual conversation that can express both opinions, and you can come to your own conclusion.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you aren't wrong. I mean, you are the best person to sort of comment on that anyway, considering it's, your field of study.
I mean, healthy dialect and conversation should be normal, right? But it's 2021.
Yeah, don't be stupid. Toxic culture.
All right, so we've got some questions. Apparently, you've got a good one.
No, man. After that one, I was like, let's try and do a funny one. And it's like, I got all fucking serious ones.
All right, well, I got funny ones.
Go on. If you let's lighten the mood first and foremost.
All right, yeah, okay. That's probably a good idea.
I've got a couple of good questions, but the one that I got is, we're going to be here for another 3 hours. So you guys get ready for part 4 and 5 coming up.
All right. Would you rather wear pants 3 sizes too big with no belt your entire life, or wear shoes 3 sizes too small always?
Ooh. Say it again. What's the pants?
So pants 3 sizes too big with no belt, or shoes 3 sizes too small forever?
Probably pants that are too big.
Yeah, squish feet. That's how you're getting some. What's the word? You're getting some what are those things that develop on the end of your feet? Oh, God damn it. There's a word for them. Bungles. God, what am I thinking of?
Bunions.
Bunions, yeah. I was thinking bunions. Yeah.
What are you talking about? Bunions, yeah, grow on the inside of you for the actual, the bone disfigurement. It's fucking
People get complain wearing footy boots.
I don't think people understand, like, those that do have bunions, go get them fucking checked, because the surgery for that shit is painful from what I've understood and been told and actually looked into once upon a time. Not anymore. Not that I'm into feet. It was just, it's not like I'm not into feet, man. It was just one of those things that we had to study. So just in case you're wondering, fuck out of that shit for a joke.
Yeah.
What about you?
I think I'm going on the pants.
Yeah, I think that's just, I feel like, show some ass cheeks, you get over it. As long as you're wearing jocks, we're good.
I've worn the wrong shoes for a day and it sucked. So
yeah, I was going to say, like, it's fucking horrible.
It just means that I basically walk around with one less hand because I'll hold my pants up.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I'm sure you can probably work it out. You can tie your t-shirt around it somehow if it's got the belt holes, maybe. So I have a question, but it doesn't kind of make sense. If diet's down to same weight, but skin folds much higher in millimeters, but train hard, eat well, how? So I'm thinking this means if you're dieting down, but you're the same weight, and your skin folds end up being higher, yet you're training hard and eating well. How does this happen?
Yeah, that's what I'm going to come to.
Yeah, I think that might be the question. So if you're dieting down to the same weight, which doesn't make sense to me, I'm assuming maybe same weight being post-growth phase.
Yeah.
I have no idea that's the contextual part. Let's say dieting down to same weight. I imagine dieting down, but is the same weight. So they're recomping maybe, but skin folds are much higher. This is the tricky part. So when it comes to, I'll try and answer this. When it comes to skin folds, so many things affect skin fold readings. One, your accuracy of taking your own skin fold is a big one. So making sure to pinch the same sites. So whether it be a 3 or 5 site, if you're doing it yourself at home, easy to just do a 3 site pinch. Making sure you pinch at the same time of the same day if you're doing them once a week and every week. So like say Wednesday morning, 9 a.m., you need to try and make sure that all the protocols that you do are the same. So if you get up, go bathroom, have a shower, pinch, that's what you do every single time you go to pinch and take your measurements. You need to keep all the variables as similar as possible leading up to whatever it is. So same thing when you're taking your scale weight, same thing has to happen. Or your blood pressure, your blood glucose, everything. You don't take it at different times unless that's something that you're testing, obviously. Like if you're going to take your blood glucose post-food, just to check how quickly you return to baseline and all that sort of stuff. Different story. But if you're just going to take it for that once a week check type scenario, it needs to be the same every single week. So one, accuracy of how good you are taking the skin fold site. 2, making sure you take it at the same time, and same variables included. 3, what can affect your skin fold is water. So if you are holding fluid, especially it came from a female, time of cycle makes a big difference, obviously. Food that you consume the day before, if you overspill on glycogen, for example, you're bringing in more water, you're going to be more watery the next morning. That sort of stuff as well plays a big part. So skin folds are cool to have for female athletes or those that are wanting to use them if you are female. I would suggest taking them once a month, not once a week, unless you want to really track that data per week of your cycle. So it's like, second week of your cycle compared to the second week of the cycle the following month, the third week and fourth week, so on and so forth. But I would just say pick like the middle between your second and third week of your menstrual cycle, if you can roughly work it out, give or take. It should be when you're at your leanest for that sort of period of time, and then measure then. That'd be your best bet.
I guess another part too is like how good you are at terms of pinching the different differential between fat and muscle. So
that also true, and also how good or shit your calipers are.
Yeah, I was going to go with that. Yeah, if you've got those you've got some plastic cheap ones with no like actual calibrated spring, you're going to end up with all sorts of different numbers.
Yeah, like I said, they're not. I don't mind the plastic ones for a 3-pinch side, just for general. use if you're going to be obviously like a like bodybuilder type scenario, you're wanting to get on stage, different story. You need to probably have a bit better equipment. For Gem Pop, just wanting to track. I mean, for Gem Pop, I wouldn't use skin folds to begin with, but if it's something a metric that you would like to use or your coach has you using, because I've used them before as a Gen Pop client, not so much a competitor of any sort, and it's handy to know, handy knowledge to have. But yeah, there's just so many things that can affect skin sites, skin fold sites that I just prefer a girth measurement. Grab a tape measure, much easier. Like for the girls, it's like bust, belly button, glute, or hip, and a quad. That's it. Simple's easy. Track it. You can do that weekly. You can see the fluctuations when you do start to retain water and where you retain a bit of water sometimes, and go from there.
Fair. Completely fair.
Yeah.
All right. We'll make a little bit less serious one. Most underrated actor of all time.
Oh, come on. Most underrated.
Nicolas Cage.
Oh, fuck that. He had
Mr. B and everything.
Movies. He had 2 good movies. Maybe 3.
Hey, Gone in 60 Seconds.
I was going to say, maybe 4. Gone in 60 Seconds. Face Off.
Con Air.
Con Air. And 8mm.
Ghost Rider.
No, fuck off.
God, the last person's going to say that.
Fucking go, yeah. Ghost Rider 2. Yeah, cool.
Done 157 movies, though.
Yeah, and 153 of them are shit. Let's be real.
Legitimate underrated actor. Like,
man.
I want to say Vince Vaughn, but he just does the same role every time. But he's so good. He's so funny.
Yeah, I was thinking like you could go with like actors that so many actors these days are typecasted. So it's kind of they play the same role every time. It's kind of like Vin Diesel, like really like. But then the thing when you think about it, short of Fast and the Furious, he did like kids movies. He did like The Pacifier and shit like that. So it's like he played the same character, but in a different genre of movie. And you're like, man, this is pretty funny. It applied, but like. But you know,
he's kind of ruined yourself by doing Fast and Furious 10.
Yeah, he's not that good of an actor, I don't think.
I mean, Mark Wahlberg. I mean, good. Mark, good actor.
Yeah, but again, I don't think he's underrated.
Yeah, that's fair. That is true.
Yeah, you know, for me, if I was going to say maybe underrated, someone maybe like a Jason Statham, right?
Is he underrated though, or is he just in a very specific type?
Well, hold on. So you're thinking of the Transporter, right?
I mean, Transporter, Crank, Voltage. What else has he done? All the Expandables.
But then he did The Mechanic,
which was Homefront.
Yeah, The Mechanic. I don't know if you guys have not seen the new version of The Mechanic. Watch it with Jason Statham. It's fucking mad. Like, it's so well done.
Okay.
Yeah, and then he was in the people don't remember. He was in Mean Machine.
Yeah, that's true. He was. That's
the longest. So it's like the English version of The Longest Yard.
Yes,
with Vinnie Jones.
Great movie.
Great
movie.
Like,
that's a very good movie.
But you know what I mean? Like, it's those that can play different roles, or for me, like, not that he's underrated, but my favorite actor by far of all time is Johnny Depp. There's no question. I've seen every Johnny Depp movie ever made. Don't even test my knowledge on Johnny Depp. I will fucking ruin you. Like, that's me. I love Johnny Depp because he plays so much variety.
Amber Heard position.
Yeah, no, she's a fucking idiot. But anyway, I'm hoping he fucking takes her to the bank and takes all the fucking money. But apparently he's coming out and he's doing Addams Family next year. I saw a poster for it on Netflix. Him and Eva Green. Like, I am so keen because Addams Family is top 5 for me. One of my favorite movies.
Fair. I mean,
and I love it.
Underrated, like, it's interesting because like underrated now or across their entire career. Because I mean, like, looking at like say Owen Wilson doing things like what was that movie he did with Jackie Chan? The
Shanghai Noon.
Yeah, High Noon, Shanghai Noon. Like,
Shanghai Noon, yeah.
Great movie, action and comedy. But then, like, you look at, Internship Now, not Dodgeball. God, what was he in? Wedding Crashers, like.
Yeah, and then he did like, and then you look at his range. He did Marley and Me, and he started
exactly.
I don't know anyone that didn't cry in that fucking movie, and don't pretend like he didn't.
Yeah,
like a dog dies, you cry. If you don't cry, you don't have a heart.
The one guy I don't mind, Miles Teller. He's actually.
Is he Baby Driver?
No.
Who's Miles Teller?
He's the guy from. Sadly, he played Mr. Fantastic in the revamp of Fantastic Four.
Sorry, yeah, cool.
Terrible movie.
Yeah.
But he's also done some weird, like the
drummer, whatever it was.
Drummer, great movie. But then he also went and did a movie I just watched called Bleed for This, which is about I believe he's an Italian American boxer.
Ends
up in the car accident, ends up in like the halo brace, comes back from spinal surgery to become the world champion again. Like fantastic movie, but all different ranges. But like you look at him, it's kind of like, I want to hate you, but I don't.
Yeah, he was in 21.
Yeah,
not 21. Yeah. 21. No, it wasn't 21. 21's the Blackjack movie. Yeah, 21 over. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
He's hilarious in that.
Yeah, he's had some great movies. I was like, okay, actually, like this guy's all right. Minus the Fantastic Four movie, you ruined me for that. But besides that, not bad.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, is he underrated? Right? Like what?
Well, I mean,
like underrated. Like it'd have to be an actor that probably play like what do you call it? Casey Affleck.
Who?
Casey Affleck, Ben Affleck's brother. But if you ever watch, you'd know as soon as you see him, you'd be like, oh, fuck, I didn't even think of him. In the old 90s movies and stuff like that, he's in.
Yeah, fair.
He's in like, what's the movie with Matt Damon, Robin Williams? I always think it's called Finding Forrester, but it's not.
This one's all you.
Oh, what's it? Good Will Hunting. Oh, fuck, I can't believe I forgot about that. Like Good Will Hunting, great fucking movie.
Oh, yeah.
Casey Affleck's one of the support crew. Like Ben Affleck's in it, and so is Casey Affleck.
Okay. Yeah, right.
As one of the best friends. He's always the support. He's never the main actor, right?
Yeah.
But he's great in every movie he fucking does. You're like, like, is that what you mean by underrated? You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, if we mean
anyone that plays
in my performance in the bedroom, like that's underrated, but it's also I underdeliver. So
you're 100%. Like, yeah, you're not over promising anything, so it's okay.
All right. I mean that will be here all day trying to discuss who's an underrated actor.
Yeah, like I could come up with a ton of fucking actors, so it's kind of like, man, like I don't know how much we want to get into this.
Someone who's underrated though, I think, in their range is Will Ferrell, because not only is he a great actor, he's an instrumentalist and he's a vocalist. Just saying.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you want to go that way as well, you could say like Eddie Murphy's the same.
Yeah, Eddie Murphy's great. 80s and 90s Eddie Murphy, and I want to say early 2000s, but also barely. 80s and 90s.
But I mean, like Eddie Murphy, I don't know if people actually know, he's got an album. Like the dude can sing.
Yeah, he can
sing.
He does a spin-off of Michael Jackson on his stand-up Delirious, and it's actually like spot on.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, the dude can actually sing. Like the dude's got a voice. That's like also like Jamie Foxx. There you go. If you want to go underrated, Jamie Foxx.
Yes, he actually is. Like he is. Yeah.
There you go. Done.
Yeah, yep.
Question.
Ray Charles. What's that movie that was in with Charlie Day and what's it called? They kill the bosses. Horrible bosses.
Oh yeah.
Great guy. Yeah. Like not a bad guy, but yeah. Okay. Yeah. Jamie Foxx.
Done. And just never mind, he did Django Unchained and
we'll forget. Those amazing films.
And it's a sick fucking movie. So I got one here. So g'day Aaron, what are yours and Ben's thoughts on the first 20 minutes of this morning's Bro Chat, which is that podcast we were talking about? It's by Fuad Abiad. It's a fucking sick podcast. If anyone ever wants to listen to it, please get onto it because it's hilarious. But they spoke about anxiety, and the question was, one of the bodybuilders, so Ian Valier, who's obviously a top 10 Olympia bodybuilder, is or was using SSRIs. Now, SSRIs, basically selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, used as an antidepressant. Basically, that's what an antidepressant really is. They're talking about anxiety, and it's like basically how small triggers can really set the mind off in that, like, you don't want to be here anymore. Like to that point, not so much like a little set off and you get angry and you get over it. It's more like, I think a decent example would be like, your tire blows out and you're like, why me? Fuck this. I just can't be fucked. Like, why am I even here? Type scenario. Like to that extent. They were just asking how, and then they were talking about like situations that make them anxious. And one of the guys on there, Guy Cisterno, who's he just retired IFBB pro. Basically, he wasn't understanding the extent of that anxiety. And he sort of turned around and said, well, he gets anxious before sometimes going to the gym. And obviously we know that that's not the same type of anxiety, and that's performance anxiety, which is a little bit different, and can even be sometimes good for you depending on the situation, obviously. So it's like the question is just like, what are my thoughts on it? And it's kind of like, well, we jokingly made the comment last week in our little roundtable that, what would bodybuilding be without those that don't have mental health issues? And we're just like, well, it wouldn't exist. Like, but I mean, like what my personal opinion on is really doesn't make too much of a difference. I mean, it's each to their own, really. It's kind of like, well, anxiety is such a broad term these days. It encompasses so much. And just for, I guess, some background context, not that I've really ever actually shared this publicly, so I didn't want to go into this sort of shit, but obviously you're aware of it, but and a couple of obviously people close to myself are aware of it, like definitely have been clinically diagnosed with social anxiety pretty bad. I've also been diagnosed with manic depression. So I personally was suicidal a while back and still have episodes of suicidal thoughts that do occur more so obviously in high times of stress. So it's really just stress management for myself personally. Again, different for everybody, and that's I guess the beauty in interindividuality, right? And trying to standardize things across such a broad spectrum is where I start to sort of fall off the train and be like, well, why are we trying to standardize things for people when every single person is different? So, and
that's the thing it's becoming too. We're finding in psych as disorders and diagnoses expand, is people are starting to fit more of a spectrum on the spectrum as opposed to a yes or no, black or white sort of diagnosis, because people can have 6 out of 10 of a criteria. They can have 3 out of 10. They could have 1 out of 10. They could have, it might be 20 out of 10. Like they've found new associations to this disorder. And so diagnosing simply a yes or no is misconstruing or misadvising the situation. And it's existing more of a spectrum. I think the other thing to understand too is it's whether or not that diagnosis is A, debilitating, or B, I guess, not so much beneficial, but can it be used? Michael Phelps, for instance, argued that his ADHD was actually a superpower and a weapon that he could use in his performance of 7 gold medals at the Olympics. When you look at, say, the thing to mostly understand when it comes to bodybuilders is though they are probably the biggest people in the world in terms of muscularity, conditioning, when at the degree of being top 10 at the Olympia, they are the top tier of the top tier. Like that's the Michael Jordan level of bodybuilding. These guys still generally perceive themselves with a sense of body dysmorphia. Now, that body dysmorphia, whether it's good or bad, is dependent on the person. If you go to a Gen Pop and say, hey, the biggest guy on the planet thinks that he's like still holding too much fat, he's lean here, small here, his cars aren't growing, whatever, you're going to say, well, that's insane. You're messed up in the head. You got to think of the context they exist in. And it's not only their job, it's their sport, and it's their income, it's their environment, it's their life to be at the best of the best. And so these body dysmorphias and these anxieties, it's reasonably understandable why they have them and why they might want to address them, or simply, I guess, be aware of them and acknowledge them and utilize the tool that it is. I guess it'd be a negative more so if you were to hear him say, I have anxiety, or I have social anxiety, or I have this anxiety around training, therefore I'm not going to go to the gym. But you get a sense of arousal and a sense of understanding that he says, I have this level of anxiety before I go to the gym. I'm, unconscious of the fact that my calves are looking smaller, or my body fat's, I'm 10 weeks out and I should be leaner, or what have you, or, it's a different process we're trying this year that I'm going to try to be fuller for longer and dry out closer to the show. And so my look is off. They're all going to be minute details to the Gen Pop, but to them, they're massive factors that's going to affect their anxiety levels, their mental prowess, their mental processing power, their self-perception, how they fit into the gym world. Like all these things amplify. But there's very few other sports that are so inclusive of your life that makes sense. So you don't really get to have a basketball or be like, I went home and I wasn't playing basketball and everyone looked at me badly. When you're a professional bodybuilder at like the top 10, there is an infused pressure that comes with the fact that how you look off the stage reflects how you're going to perform on the stage. And they kind of have to deal with that and either utilize it and get better from it, or it kind of subsides and I guess takes them down, because if you can't handle that stress and that pressure, you're not really going to do too well. But and that does come back to Instagram and stuff as well. These guys have massive Instagram presences now as a form of money and income. Mm-hmm. Back in the day in the 90s and stuff, you see the Lee Priests and the Ronnie Colemans get fucking huge off season and they get puffy and they just don't care. Nowadays it's kind of like, yeah, I'm a massive bodybuilder, I'm a massive on stage and I look huge, but also I've got to try and stay in somewhat condition around year round for appearances, for photo shoots, for
exactly right.
for social media presences, for programs, for advertising, for marketing, for my suppliers, my sponsors. So the pressure is a little bit different. And I guess that performance pressure then is also different compared to, say, like I've come from a rugby league background. I get what he means by sort of like anxiety before training, because to train effectively, you have to be very present. And I suck at it sometimes. Like I can go through the numbers and I go through them and I know I'm like sucking myself up and getting 60 kilos on incline press. That was great. But you have to sustain that for the entire 2-hour program or like the hour and a half session there versus like footy. You're there for 90 minutes a week and maybe 2 training sessions or 3 training sessions. And then you zone out or you go do other training, you go do other things. Whereas this is kind of like you have to be present not only for the entire session, but each time you presently pick up the weight and engage in that set, and you have to just stop thinking about anything else. And that's fucking hard. That is a hard thing to do. And especially if you have anxiety, performance anxiety then becomes, well, I'm underperforming because I'm underthinking about the set. I'm underthinking about the session. I'm overthinking about stuff outside of the gym. I need to be present here for this session. And then that lift becomes less intense because I'm not as focused. My perceived failure becomes sooner than it does later. And so I fatigue quicker because, all these things are going on. So it's whilst I haven't heard that part of the podcast, it makes complete sense, I guess, in the way that he's talking about it to describe it. And if utilizing SSIRs, RIs are going to help him stay, I guess, less consumed by the anxiety or less overwhelmed by the anxiety and still able to function and because it is his job and it is his life. If that helps him perform, then, I mean, kudos to him. Like, by all means, like, do what you need to do. I don't think it's a performance enhancer. I don't think it's it's doing much else. Who cares anyway? But yeah, it's understandable. And it's a very different form of anxiety, I feel, to like general population or other sports, because there's not much that's so inclusive. Yeah.
I completely agree. Like I said, it was an interesting comment, and the only reason why I managed to listen to it was actually out for a walk before I did this podcast and get my 45 minutes to an hour walkout. And I always listen to a podcast, and I always hang for that podcast to jump out because it's a great listen. Yeah, part of the reason why I wanted to start this one, to be honest, because as much as I love those guys, the science aspect to what they say, not their fault. Not one of them is actually qualified in anything to do with science. So
it was funny. I saw one of Fawad's posts the other day, and it was like, oh, I usually hate talking to the science guys. Usually it's better the experienced guys. And I was like, hang on, man. Like,
yeah, well, he says that because he's actually, honestly, if you ever listen to his podcast, man, it's actually really good in that he admits he's just so trained in his ways.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Being like that anecdotal bro type, I guess, typical style of thinking. But then he has the guys that are science on. He's had Lane Norton on. I think he had Brett Schoenfeld on from memory. I listened to one. He had Jeff Nippard, even though I don't classify him as really that much of a science guy, personally. But like he had this.
He said volume once.
Yeah, like, and they were talking about, different ways to apply this sort of thing. And it's even more funny, like that actual podcast went into, they were talking about people like bodybuilding being the thing that not everyone can do, and that's sort of its the reason why people do it, because it is so hard to do that those that survive do well. And one of the questions was adding, originally I can't remember what the original question was, but one of the questions was, do you add milk or fat-free milk to your protein shake? And they're all laughing like, no, we have water with it, like that's how we drink it. But not to say that you can't use fat-free milk, but it's like, well, and then one of the guys is like, well, like that's just making it easier for yourself. Like, why would you do that? That this is why we do what we do. And it's kind of like, well, hold on. And they were talking about dieting breaks. That's what they're talking about, cheat meals and stuff like that. And like having a cheat meal every week versus you probably shouldn't have one because you're not in shape yet. Like in terms of being in a contest prep. I mean, if you have a coach that, premeditates giving you a cheat meal, like, every Saturday night, for example, versus like over the 3 weeks versus having it reactively, then, like you're probably not built to do the sport. And it's kind of like, well, on the other side to that, if you can make something very, very difficult easier and still get the same result, why wouldn't you do it? It's kind of like just a very age-old thinking, age-old mentality. It's like, well, like we have to do this real hard. And like, man, I'm all for it. Like I fucking, like, me, man, like, do what you got to do. Right.
But
at the same time, if I can make that a little bit easier and more manageable and easier to deal with, and I'm still going to get the same result, why the fuck wouldn't I do it?
that was like, I think it was it Schoenfield or was it Norton recently put out a paper on the two control groups between 12 straight weeks of dieting and 16 weeks of dieting with intermediate dietary breaks every fourth week. So the duration of technical deficit dieting was the same, but the breaks were the 16 weeks broke up the diet to give an extra week of maintenance calories or a diet break, and actually found that the weight loss was greater, the fat loss was greater, the muscle retention was higher, the enjoyment factor and the perception of hunger was less, and the sustainability of the diet after the fact, I think, was even improved as well. So it's like you can still get the same outcome, modulate it slightly, make it less painful. There's no extra, like, just like there's no extra brownie points for eating more veggies than you need, there's no extra brownie points for suffering harder than you have to. Like,
exactly right.
Yeah, you got extra shredded early, but if you can't sustain that come show day, then it's pointless.
Yeah, that's the other thing why I think now dieting preps for comps are longer than what they usually be. Because I remember, like the old school days used to be diet for like 16 weeks, diet all the way hard, no cheat meals, no this, no that, blah, 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 blah. Get to show day, you're good to go. But it's like, well, hold on, we can do a 20 to 24 week prep. We can include some refeeds or diet breaks in there, make the process easier. You're going to last longer. You're going to come in better. Why would we fucking do it?
Yep. Yeah, no, I completely agree. That's but I guess that's the pros. Like, we have to accept both sides of the conversation, right? Like, and sometimes within the bro science stuff, within the ignorance of science, there are some golden nuggets that we can take away. Like, we do start to see some things that, something worked and we can go, okay, well, why did that work? They might not know, but they did it and it worked for them. So let's try and pick it apart and see what part of it actually worked. And so sometimes it can help. But yeah, it's funny when the bros sort of like, not the bros, but when those types of guys admit, I don't track the data for this reason. I just do this. My coach puts this in the program and I say, do it. And it puts this in my diet and I eat it. And it's like, yeah, but knowledge is power, and having that power reduces your anxiety and reduces your stress because you understand why you're doing something. So it potentially helps reduce the stress load and the negatives of the prep. So why wouldn't you want to know?
Well, yeah, right. Like, less stress in the most stressful time isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Well, I perceive like in a lot of instances, I perceive stress as a threat response in general instance. Like, if you feel a stressor, it's a stress response. It's a threat or a response to a situation. Anxiety is, the logical, easiest way to express anxiety, I guess, to that stressor is that you perhaps don't have the weapons to confront the threat. So if in this instance it's, I get anxiety over my prep, I'm not going to be lean enough, I'm not going to do this. If you actually talk to your coach and you understand the modalities and the reasons and the periodizations and the calorie cycles and what you're going to refeeds look like, it reduces that anxiety because then you have the tools to battle that thought up top and go, well, actually, I know that I should look like this at this point, but I'm going to look like this at this point, and this is the reason why. So then you reduce your stress, you reduce your anxiety, you sleep better, less cortisol, you have a greater performance when you train. So you're focused on each session because you know it accrues to the total outcome of the result. So yeah, to me, it makes more sense understanding.
Yeah, like who would have thought? Less stress produces better results. Like logic.
Exactly.
That's the thing, and that's literally what we're talking about: emotion versus logic. Like, this dude's so old school in the way he does things in his approach. He's just talking from emotion, not logic. Yeah, because logic would dictate, hey, if we can make a very stressful situation less stressful and still get the best outcome or the same outcome, why wouldn't we do it?
Yeah, exactly. All right, I got a fun one. Would you rather have a time machine to travel into the future and past, or a teleporting device to go anywhere in the current timeline?
If we weren't in COVID, I definitely would have gone with the teleporter.
Well, technically, time and space are not mutually exclusive, so I'm just saying.
We're not going down the physics route. Physics route. Fucking no. All right? We're going to be here for another 5 hours. No. Yeah, I mean, right now, like if it was to be right now, I'd almost go the time machine, to be quite honest, only because I would like to see how this all turns out. Pure curiosity. If no COVID, teleporter for sure.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, yeah, okay. I mean, like, I'm curious on the teleporter, the time travel, to see just how many people the global conspiracy government kills off, and if, the 5G actually worked, then I got better reception. But I'd also go back, drop $1 million in Tesla, and forward.
But if you're smart, you don't need to drop $1 million. You drop $10.
Also fair.
A little bit in Tesla, a little bit in Bitcoin.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Hey, Bezos, do you need $100,000 to help start that garage off? Well, here you go, buddy.
Yeah, pretty much. Just like a little bit of money here, a little bit of money here, there. $10 here, $10 there.
50% control and share, and here's $100,000. Done. I don't need anything ever again. Okay, I would do that.
Yeah, like I said, just pure curiosity. What happens now in the next couple of years? So, take away COVID, definitely teleport, man. I'm happy with the mystery of tomorrow, provided tomorrow doesn't involve COVID.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy the idea that things are random chaos, and we can control, and we can make the most of it. So, knowing exactly where it ends up, purely from a COVID standpoint, I'd love to just to go like what actually happened.
Yeah,
that is kind of like whatever. Like I can make the best plans I can. And I can't know anything else.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, the idea of being able to teleport to a beach, like in Europe, midsummer, like I like that idea. Hey,
Mykonos, boom, I'm here.
Yeah, hard.
Okay, one more. Should you push someone if they ask you to push them mentally and physically towards their goals, or is that dangerous?
So as a coach, look, it's time and place. It's always, I think, one of those things. Pushing, I have this conversation a lot with motivation versus discipline. Literally had a client check in at the start of the week, and he's just like, dude, had a shit week. A Gen Pop client, nothing, obviously not a competitor or anything like that. Had a shit week, motivation was way down. I'll obviously do better this week. And it's like, man, no stress. But also we need to understand that motivation is fleeting. It will never be constant. This is where discipline takes place. So obviously having your goal being important enough to you to outweigh those motivational times. So if it's not, that's okay. Like that's fine. As long as we can accept that and you're happy with that, then I'm all good, man. But if you're telling me like you want to lose 10 kilos, and you're telling me that you're not motivated to lose 10 kilos in this particular time, which is understandable. We're in Melbourne, we're in lockdown. I get it. We need to put things into place, processes into place day to day, week to week that allow you to, get that one step closer to your goal and not worry about that outcome, because that outcome will come if we hit these processes. That's when it's most appealing and easiest to sort of hit. So pushing people in that aspect, it's just not, hey, you're a shit cunt because you didn't do your frigging thing. It's no, like that's not what we're talking about. It's like, hey, you did this well, we didn't do this so well. Motivation is low. So let's look at this and see if we can, instead of motivation being low, all I need you to do is hit these 3 things for me. Like hit your protein target, for example, hit your steps for the week and hit your training sessions. We're good. That's a win for the week.
Yeah, that's understanding too. Is that like motivation can be built, but also this is where I think me and you're going to relate really well in terms of when business takes off. Is it's a unique field that is an arrogant assumption of knowledge by me. I think I was at first when I first started studying it. Is the understanding of motivation and the different forms of motivation and how to elicit that from people to get them to buy in emotionally to their goal. Because then, like as you said, motivation can be fleeting if it's not the right type. And if you don't buy into why you're doing something, if the goal isn't set with the right emotional connection, you haven't established a contrast to why you're doing it and what the the opposite outcome is if you don't do it, it's very easy to get off track and derail and that sort of thing. So getting early in with the client to understand, hey, let's establish why this is most meaningful to you. Why do you want to do it? But at the same time, it's also understanding the right type of way to push a client or push a friend or a person, like understanding the language they respond to in a positive way and the way that they can bounce back from something and you can get them back on their feet is very important in terms of, oh, my friends asked me to push them. You don't want to, call them a piece of shit and they're weak and a coward because they had a bad day. So time you go, all right, we know why the fuck you're doing this. Are you really going to throw in the towel today of all days? And if you accept defeat this day, what's going to stop you from doing it the next day and the day after? Like, are we going to accept this excuse, or are we going to, you told me you have this date you want to be this by? Is every time you make this decision going to get you closer or further away? How do we push that, and how do we get you back on track? So the key difference, I think, is language and understanding the person pushing. Because if you push the wrong person the wrong way, you definitely could fuck them. Like that could
100%.
inevitable. But at the same time, like me and Dalton have a very unique relationship in the way we discuss things, and that's taken a long time to establish as friends and my coach. But I know that if I can send him a message thinking lift was good, and in my head, yep, that was about a 7 RAR. He's like, that's a 6. Like you can, like if someone had a gun to your head right now, are you telling me that that's not getting up another rep? Or he might include something about mum or dad or something like that. Whereas like, if you were watching your dad and they said to you, hey, look, your dad doesn't die if you get 2 more reps, then guess what? I'm doing fucking 2 more reps. Like 100%. It's understanding the communication between the client. To most people, that probably sounds psychotic, but person to person, contextual dependence, it depends, but it's, yeah, like when someone says, I want you to push me, and there's going to be days I say, I want to quit, you fucking push them. Like they've come to you with a desire to help. I said to Dalton when Dad passed away, I said, no matter what I say to you, don't let me quit competing. I need to finish off this prep. Like I need to see it through and actually execute it and do it. It's the only thing I have control over right now. Like, no matter what I say, I'm not getting on stage in the best condition I can. And yep, cool. That's it. We've established that boundary. That's the line now. That's where the line is in the sand. I'll do everything in my power to get you there, knowing that. So, yeah, I'm all for it.
Yeah. That's good, man.
I had one more before we wrap up, I guess, because we've been going on for a while. That was more of a hormone and chemical question.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. Okay. Possible question for the podcast. Do you cycle a pre or a thermo after a set period of time? And if yes, do you feel a larger effect from not taking them? This has been in response to general question, but I see it in the chemical relationship and reaction to caffeine. That's what I'm looking at from.
That's the best. Honestly, that's the only pre-workout I use. So yeah.
What was that? What'd you say?
It's the only pre-workout I would use.
What's that?
Caffeine.
Oh, right. Sorry. Yeah. So in that instance, in any caffeinated pre-workout product,
exactly.
Would you cycle it, and for what reason, or like, would you feel a better effect from it if you cycled it? To me, that comes back to the difference between allostasis and homeostasis. Getting to the degree that we've reached a tolerance dependence to caffeine is going to affect whether or not you should probably cycle it. I think people preemptively assume because they're not feeling jacked up instantaneously that they've got a tolerance to it. I think you also have to consider whether or not you've eaten right, slept right, hydrated properly, got food in your stomach, what time close to training did you take it? Is it after work? Is it before work? So a bunch of nuances to differentiate. But I mean, if it's really at a point of tolerance, and you've reset a new base level of homeostasis and you've stressed the body that much that you're just abusing caffeine, probably time for a break off it to resensitize. Resensitize is probably the wrong word, but I guess deflate that level. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people I think overreact to how much they think they're taking and what their problems are.
Yeah, that's fair. Very similar, I guess, premise in that. Can you cycle on and off caffeine? Sure, you can. You will obviously feel the effects once you cycle off more, but at the same time, once you're back on it, doesn't mean caffeine isn't doing its thing just because you don't feel it. So it still has that like thermogenic effect ish, we'll call it. Even if you don't feel the actual same effects from, getting that high buzz and all that sort of stuff, right? Yeah. And it doesn't mean you take more caffeine. There is a supplement over the counter that you can take that can assist with, I'm trying to think how the right word. It assists in like separating the binding of a stimulant. It's L-theanine. It's not, the research is still iffy on it. I have L-theanine in one of my supplements that I have for overnight for sleep, basically. It can be shown to help make stimulants still give you that stimulant feel, if that makes sense. So it's like you don't really ever become accustomed to it. Now, again, don't sort of quote me on that. It's just one of those things I remember reading about a while ago. It's something that I've actually got on one of my lists to read about a bit more because I'm personally curious about it because like most people, like they like to feel the buzz of a pre-workout, right?
Yeah.
And obviously if you take a pre-workout, caffeine, or making sure that it is caffeinated, like if you don't start to feel that buzz, it simply doesn't mean it's not working. It's just that you're probably becoming accustomed to it at a receptor level. So you can, there are ways to obviously change that, and it's cycling on and off. Sure, works. Just don't have caffeine for a week. Usually, it's about enough time. Jump back on after a week, you'll probably feel the caffeine again.
Yeah.
Also, the actual dosaging of caffeine, making sure you get the dosaging right. I'm still a fan of minimum effective dose.
Yeah.
But I think you can have up to, I wanted to say it was 6. I think the upper end, I got a feeling the upper end was like 8 milligram per kilo.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's for performance, but I don't know anyone that takes 8 milligram per kilo.
That's 800 milligrams for me, but to keep that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's like 800 milligrams of caffeine. Like that's what 4 no-dose tablets.
Yeah,
because they're 200 milligram. You'll be good. You'll be good with literally like a 2 milligram to 3 milligram per kilo more than anything.
Yeah. And I generally find too, a lot of people that are adjusting too much or come accustomed to the effects of pre-workouts to the degree they think they have to cycle them, generally don't have the other aspects, like I guess not in check, but sort of controlled. So, food timing, hydration, sleep, stress levels. Like if you think about it, if all caffeine is really doing is causing epinephrine, and so we're stimulating the adrenal glands and causing the fight or flight response, not synthetically, but to a degree we're manipulating the fight or flight response to stimulate itself. If you've got other factors already doing that, like stress and cortisol build up,
constantly firing.
Exactly. If that's constantly stimulating and firing, yes, to a degree, it's going to be weakened because it doesn't need to react. It's already going. So you're putting in caffeine, then you go, well, I want more adrenaline, and it goes, well, I've already given you fucking like 6 months worth in 2 days. So what do you want? So
don't be greedy.
Yeah, that's kind of where it gets. It seems to be more so for me with a lot of people that bring back. Oh, I've gotten used to it. And you're like, you haven't really. Like,
when you're in that state and you're constantly stressed, anxious, and producing epinephrine so often, and you don't get the kicks from pre-workout, use an EpiPen. No. You're gonna get it doesn't matter what your body's doing. Synthetic adrenaline is going to be the way to go, man.
It's like getting the magic star in Mario.
Yeah.
Just everywhere you go now, just
literally. No, don't do that.
Best practice.
I am still curious to try a workout using an EpiPen for a pre-workout. I'm not going to lie. I have problems. I know people. Shut up. Don't at me.
Mental, physical, physiological.
Man, all of them. But yeah, just it'd be interesting to see what happens. Just tell me you would not be curious to have a little bit of.
I do it for sure.
Yeah, like just someone who's got an expiring EpiPen, please just slide in my DMs. I'll buy it and just try it for a home workout. And if I die, I die.
Yeah. I think that's that's a marathon. Again, we're so good at talking shit.
Surprised we still haven't been cancelled, bro.
Yes, look, guys, 8 weeks in and we haven't been cancelled. I think you guys got to up your game. Like, do we have to start really pushing some boundaries here?
Bad. But as always, guys and girls, thanks for tuning in and listening. Thank you for the questions, and continue to hit us up with questions. Even if we don't put up the question box, if there's something you want us to chat about and you want us to rant about, just slide in the DMs and if you see something happen in the world or some shit that is in line with what we know or should know or could know, send it through. But a few more people doing that, so gives us something to I guess look into, expand. It's always a bit of fun to talk about.
Yeah.
More until next time, guys and girls. Catch you later.
Peace.